We are here now with Sidhu, who is Vice Director at the Westings Institute in New York. And he gave here at the ISODARCO a wonderful talk, very detailed, on the Indian nuclear program and the motivations behind India going nuclear. And we would like, since the main topic of this ISODARCO is how to move to zero, according to the proposal put forward 2 years ago by the so-called Quartet of Wise Men in the United States, what the contribution India may give to this process.
Okay. As you know, the quartet, when they made their first op-ed in 2006 January, actually made reference to a plan which was put forward by the then Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, in June of 1988 at the third UN Special Session on Disarmament. And this is very interesting because this came at a time 2 years after Reykjavik and almost 2 years after Rajiv Gandhi and the then Soviet President Gorbachev had also made a joint declaration on a nuclear weapon-free world. So in some ways, India has very much imbibed the idea of the quartet, of the four horsemen. In fact, it could be argued that many of the ideas that the four horsemen are now promoting are ideas that India initially suggested as part of the Rajiv Gandhi plan in 1988. Of course, since then, as you know, India went on a very different path for a number of reasons, some of which had to do with the indefinite extension of the NPT, and weaponized and also conducted nuclear tests in 1998 and declared itself a nuclear weapon state. But it's always this push towards weaponization was always countered by a pull towards disarmament. And one indication of this was that in 2006, the government again has reintroduced, if you like, an upgraded version of the Rajiv Gandhi plan at the UN, which basically draws out 7 elements, key elements, to try and highlight what India would like to do to support the process and trend towards nuclear disarmament. And a lot of those elements very much tie in with the proposals which are put forward by the four horsemen as well. I think I can enumerate 2 or 3 of those, if you like, just to get an idea. The first is that all nuclear weapon states need to give a categorical commitment. They are going to give up nuclear weapons in a time-bound framework. That's the first element. Then the second element is to reduce in the interim the salience, the relevance of nuclear weapons in today's world order. Then there are a series of confidence-building measures which have also been suggested, including no first use, reducing nuclear dangers, including D-alert, for example, perhaps greater transparency. All of these are elements which can also be sort of fitted in. And then finally, there is going to be a desire for a new treaty, which is going to basically sign on to all nuclear weapon states giving up their nuclear weapons in a certain time, and all non-nuclear weapon states not adhering and picking up new nuclear weapons. So in that sense, India is very much supportive of the idea, and it's very important to have India in this process because although everybody is looking at it from the US-Russia perspective, India, being one of the relatively newer entrants into the nuclear club, can also push from the bottom up. And there's a very interesting article that we have just put out, written by a former US Strategic Command senior representative, General Lance Lord, which also talks about how you might want to count up from zero and how that might play a role as well. And so I think that's going to be something interesting to look at as well. So India is very much committed to the process. But I think there are two caveats. The first caveat is we will really have to see very serious movement and commitment on the part of US and Russia.
Let me understand better this point. I mean, do you mean that they first have to, I don't know, calm down a certain number of weapons and that India will enter the scene from that moment on only, or that you only want a fixed timetable that you can rely on?
Right.
And
right.
join this movement from the very beginning.
Right.
Which one?
Right. Well, that's a very good question. That's an excellent question. I think if the second was true, if there was a process which would include all nuclear weapon states and states with nuclear weapons, I have no doubt that India would be very willing to join that process right from the beginning. But I think there is an understanding and a reservation that many of the other nuclear weapon states may not want to be part of that discussion until the numbers of the US and Russia come down significantly. For example, it's been said that this is what Chinese officials have said, for example. So because of that, I think both Russia and the US will have to show a very important leadership. Now, I don't think it's necessary for them to come down to very, very low numbers, but as long as the trend is in a downward trajectory and there's a continuous reduction, the pressure, the incentive, the impetus which it is going to build for others to join is going to be tremendous, absolutely critical. But that's an important hurdle. That will have to happen. And the second is, I think we also need to now start getting China into part of this conversation already, certainly with the US, Russia and China. That would very much be the next element. And as you know, China has a certain sense about the numbers at which it can enter the conversation. But I don't think that's impossible. And once that sort of happens as well, then you can see this momentum starting to build up in an unstoppable way. So what the Four Horsemen have done is a very good start in the US context. Now we need to take that global.
Final question, very brief one. The Institute for East-West Studies organized a major conference in New York back in November.
October. 24th of October, right.
Exactly on the topic of reaching the nuclear weapon-free world. How do you see the role of think tanks, the academia, and this renewal of interest for nuclear disarmament?
Right. Well, thank you very much for mentioning that particular event, which very much was a highlight of the program of East-West Institute. I think that event really shows the convening power of institutes like the East-West Institute and other partner institutions. It was really a combined effort which brought together, and the significance of that is just tremendous. This was organized in the UN on UN Day, where the Secretary General publicly and for the first time endorsed the concept of a nuclear weapon convention. This is unprecedented, and it has had such an impact that governments now feel necessary to respond to the Secretary General's call. For example, one of the nuclear weapon states from Europe actually have written a letter to the Secretary General saying, we hear your call and this is what we are doing as a nuclear weapon state to facilitate your vision. So I think in some ways it's quite clear that we are facing a very unfortunate roadblock in the official movements towards disarmament and non-proliferation. And which is where I think think and do tanks like the East-West Institute, like this conference here, have a very, very important role to push the momentum, to break that logjam, and to think of innovative, creative ideas in which we can continue to push this process forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.